Alright, let's get right into it. Today, we're unpacking one of the biggest, most mind-blowing stories in entertainment, the absolutely massive, industry-shaking buyout of the video game giant, Electronic Arts. Just look at that number, $55 billion. I mean, let that sink in for a second. That is the unbelievable price tag for a company that, for so many of us, has been a huge part of gaming for decades. We're talking Madden, The Sims, Battlefield, you name it. But this isn't just about a big number. This deal is literally historic. It shatters records, and honestly, it raises some really fundamental questions about the future of creativity, about big money, and believe it or not, even about Well, the answer is something called a leveraged buyout, or LBO. Now, in plain English, what this means is that the buyers are borrowing a ton of money to make the purchase happen. And here's the kicker. That massive loan, it gets placed right onto the books of the company they just bought. In this case, EA. So who's actually at the table for this thing? Well, on one side, you've got the buyers. This is a group led by Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund. You'll hear them called the PIF. And they've got a couple of private equity partners with them. And on the other side, the target, Electronic Arts. The price they landed on was a big one, a 25% premium over the stock price, all with the goal of taking EA off the public market. Now check out this ownership breakdown, because while they call it a consortium, the reality is, well, it's a little different. When you look at the filings, you see that Saudi Arabia's PIF is going to hold over 93% of the company. So let's be clear. This isn't just an investment, it's basically a near-total takeover by a foreign government. And remember that term, leveraged buyout? This is where it really hits home. Of that huge price, a massive $20 billion is debt. That's borrowed money that EA itself is now on the hook to pay back. You've got to keep that number in your head, because it's the key to understanding all the drama and all the risks that come next. So you can imagine when this news drops. How do people react? It sent an earthquake. From the corporate offices right down to the people actually making and playing the games. And the reaction was immediate, it was powerful, both inside EA's walls and across its community of millions of players. Right away, you saw this huge divide open up between the official company line and what employees were actually feeling. Management was out there promising stability, saying, hey, it's business as usual. But on the ground, workers were immediately worried about their jobs, about the company's culture, basically seeing this as a huge payday for the execs that puts everyone else at risk. You had EA CEO Andrew Wilson sending out a message to the entire company, trying to reassure everyone that the core values of EA weren't going to change. You know, this was the official story, meant to calm everybody down. But that message did not land well with everyone. One employee who spoke anonymously put it bluntly, saying the deal felt like a betrayal. And that was especially true given Saudi Arabia's human rights record. This quote, man, it just captures that deep sense of anger and mistrust that was brewing inside the company. And that anger quickly spilled outside the company. Some of the biggest, most influential YouTubers and streamers for games like The Sims, a game famous for its inclusivity, they just walked. They publicly quit EA's official creator program, saying they just couldn't support a company whose new owner's values were, as one put it, fundamentally at odds with the very communities they had spent years building. And here's the crucial thing to understand. This isn't just about hurt feelings. These emotional reactions are tied to some very real, very tangible strategic risks. This whole deal could fundamentally change what EA is, and a lot of people are seriously worried about whether the company can even survive it. And it all comes back to that $20 billion question, doesn't it? When a company's number one job becomes paying off a giant mountain of debt, what happens to creativity? What happens to taking chances on those bold, risky ideas that lead to the next big thing? A lot of analysts are calling this the risk of a creative collapse. The idea is that the intense financial pressure is going to force EA to just double down on the safe bets. So for a game like The Sims, maybe that means fewer big, cool new features and a lot more small, expensive add-on packs. For Battlefield, it could mean prioritizing things like microtransactions over making sure the core game is balanced and fun. At the end of the day, making that next big interest payment could become way more important than making the next great game. And look, this fear of outside influence, it's not just some what-if scenario. There's actually a precedent. After the same Saudi fund, the PIF, bought the game developer SNK, Their next big fighting game suddenly featured soccer star Cristiano Ronaldo. Why? Well, it turns out he plays for a soccer team also owned by the PIF. It's a pretty clear example of the new owners using games to push their own interests. No, these risks aren't just being debated on forums by gamers and analysts. Oh no. The ripples from this deal have now spread way beyond the gaming world, all the way to the top, and they've caught the attention of the United States government. The group that handles this is called CFIUS. That's the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. And their whole job is to look at deals where if foreign power gets control of a US company and figure out if it poses any risks to national security. And if you look at their track record over the last few years, CFIUS has been focused on one thing more and more: our data. They've stepped in on deals involving financial data with MoneyGram, really sensitive personal data with the dating app Grindr, and of course, all that user data with TikTok. There's a very clear pattern here. They are serious about protecting American data from foreign control. And this is exactly why the EA deal is raising so many red flags. We're not just talking about your saved games here. EA has data on over 700 million people. And what's even more concerning is that their anti-cheat software often runs at the kernel level on your PC. Now what that means is it has the deepest, most privileged access possible to your computer's entire system. Regulators are worried that an access level like that could be turned into a weapon for spying or even pushing malicious software. And this is not some fringe theory. We're talking about senior US senators who have publicly called for a full investigation into this deal, basically saying that handing over this kind of data and system access to a foreign government is a huge potential danger. Which brings us to this crazy paradox at the heart of it all. On one hand, EA now has the backing of a massive sovereign wealth fund, which means access to almost unlimited cash. But on the other hand, because of how this deal was structured, it's also stuck with a crippling, historic amount of debt. One of those promises total creative freedom. The other demands financial survival at any cost. So which one is it going to be? Which path will define the future for one of the most important companies in gaming history? Well, that is the $55 billion question.